It can be articles, it can be the latest articles, it can be anything. So whatever articles that you have or whatever passages you get in the reading section, they are all based on US. Okay, they are all written in the US. That is one thing that you need to remember. Now you might have a doubt that, ma'am, what if, I mean, how are we supposed to know about the different themes or cultures in the US? For that, I will provide you with the material that is required for you to get the basic idea. But remember one thing, there's no such thing that you have to have in-depth knowledge about that particular subject, because whatever is given in the passage, you will be asked questions on the basis of that only. Okay, so be clear with that. So the genres that we have is US history. Then we have something called as fiction. Fiction is something that is general based. Okay, it's just a small story sort of a thing or a small incident described. Okay, then we have science passages. It's very important for you to understand science passages are a little on the difficult side. By difficult, I don't mean that they're difficult to understand. There will be certain terms, particular terms that will be used in the science passages, but don't worry, they never ask you the meaning of those terms. They just, so you have to be able to understand one thing, that when you're doing the reading section in the SAT, you have to keep aside the fact that you know everything. Okay, it is not it's not going to happen that you know everything. That's never going to happen, because science, you are just class 11 and 12 students. It's not important that you know everything. Okay, especially the terms. And so just remember what happens, children panic that we don't know what this particular term means and what is going to happen and all of that. That's never going to happen. Just remember that you're not going to be asked for the meanings of those words. Are you getting my point? So US history, fiction, science. Sometimes we have psychology passages. Okay, sometimes we have psychology passages. Otherwise, one of these is repeated. Either US history is repeated, or fiction is repeated, or science, or if not psychology, we sometimes have something called as sociology. Okay, or something related to feminism. Okay, or the history of females. History of females, as in the female conditions in the society. It is either related to females or it is related to certain wars, okay, or political conditions. Of late, from past a few years, what we are having is we are having either political passages or we are having, feminism related passages are more. Psychology has considerably come down. So in total, we have 5 passages in the reading section, okay, and you have 52 questions to answer. Now, I don't accept the fact that there are only 5 passages. I say there are 6 passages to answer, because one of these, so one of the 5 passages that you have is actually a dual passage. Okay, it's a dual passage. So what happens is 4 passages are, normal passages, and the 5th passage is a dual passage. And all these together constitute of 52 questions, and you have 65 minutes to answer your particular the particular section, that is the reading section. Now, when I say answer the reading section, I also mean by answering that is bubbling as well. You have to bubble your answers also. Remember that. Okay, got my point, Samisha, Vardhan, and Vanilla. Are you clear, the 3 of you? Any doubts still here?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, writing section I will be explaining to you in the next class. We'll first just go through some strategies for the reading section. Okay. Now, when it comes to the reading section, one thing you have to understand is since you have only 65 minutes, I always tell my students, don't consider it as 65 minutes, consider it as 60 minutes only, because you need to have 5 minutes as buffer. Okay, 5 minutes of buffer time is required. By buffer, I mean, probably you've left some question, you want to do that, and, or you have to bubble your answer. So there are many things that you have to do. So I tell them, consider 60 minutes only as your time. Now, if you have 60 minutes and you have 5 passages, on an average, you can spend around 12 minutes per passage, right? Now, when I say 12 minutes per passage, I mean both reading, understanding the passage, and then again answering your questions as well. So 12 minutes is what you have in your hand to do the entire thing. Okay. Now, first thing, I want to know, out of the 3 of you, how many of you have the habit of reading in like anything? Reading probably the newspaper or books or anything. Do you have a habit? Vardhan, Sanisha, Vanilla.
Yes.
Okay, Vanilla, you have a habit. Good. What about you, Sanisha?
Yes, ma'am, even I do.
Perfect. Vardhan, what about you?
Yes, ma'am. Even I.
Okay, very good. So we have very good readers this time in the class. Chalo, good. So let me just come down to what are the first things that you need to do when you start preparing for your SAT reading section. So the first thing that you will do is you will give a mock test. Okay, that I will be giving you in the next class or probably in the next week. I'll just conduct a test in the class itself, and then we will understand where each one of you stands. After the mock test, now you have to decide your order of answering. Decide your order of answering. Now, what do I mean by order of answering? What I mean is the genres. Why did I explain you about the genres? Is for you to understand that you have to make your own order. Now, in this order also, you have 2 approaches that you can follow. Okay. See, please make notes or take screenshots because all of this that I'm explaining is not given in any book. I will definitely provide you with the reading material, but that is again only passages, how to answer the questions and everything. All this deciding your order and all of that is not given in any book. So please, make notes or just take screenshots. I'm recording the class as well. So in case you need it, you can ask me for the recording as well. Okay. So yeah. So I was telling you this order can be divided into 2 types. Now you can either go from easy to difficult. Okay, or you can opt for difficult to easy. That is totally your choice, and this can be done only once you have given the test. So both these methods have to be tried, okay, so that you understand what works for you. Like for example, I'll tell you about me. When I am giving an SAT paper, or when I am just solving any SAT English paper, what I do is I'm very good with political science. Okay, I have a certain interest towards it, so I'm very good at that. So my order is political science, then I move towards fiction. Okay, then I move towards the dual passage. Okay, because dual passage, whatever it is, I find it easy to do dual passage. So I've kept it third in number. Fourth, whatever is the repeated genre. If it is science, whatever is the repeated genre. And usually my last 2 passages belong to the science section because I find it little difficult to solve. It's not about difficulty. I don't find it interesting. I've always been an art student. I was into commerce and stuff, so I don't like science. So that is the reason I've kept it last. Okay, so that works for me best because what I do is, because on an average we have 12 minutes of time, I am very good at skim and scan. So skim and scan is a technique which I will be talking about in I'll just move forward to that technique as well. So what happens is I keep the maximum time for the 2 passages that I'm very bad at. So I don't skim and scan in those 2 passages. I properly sit and read the entire thing and then I move ahead. Okay. So, but with the passages that I'm good at, so I follow easy to difficult. Okay. So the passages that I'm good at, I don't read the entire passage. I just read it in bits and pieces. Then I go to the questions, read the questions, see what I want, read it again, and that's how I answer. So there are 3 techniques of reading as well. I'll explain that to you. But the first and the foremost important thing before we move to the techniques is for you to have a rough idea about what should be your order of answering the questions. Am I clear? That is your genre. Do you want to go from difficult to easy? Now, some of my students say that, ma'am, what happens is if we start with the easy section, what happens is we become very laid back and we get so engrossed in answering the easy section only that we don't have time left for the difficult section. Okay, so and in those cases what I tell them is, okay, go for difficult to easy. Now some students find difficult to easy also very challenging, because they feel that they are spending a lot of time and their overall morale goes down when you are not able to answer the difficult passages. So it is all about you and your comfort. Both the techniques work equally well. Are you understanding my point? This is one thing that you have to decide solely. If you are not able to decide, you can come to me. Okay. Now this is my order. Usually what I suggest the kids to do is I tell them to start with fiction. Okay. Then so what I do is, people who are not able to decide their order or who need my help, what I tell them to do is I follow this technique called easy, difficult, easy, difficult. So fiction is pretty easy. All the students find it easy. So fiction, then I put one science passage, then I give them political science, okay, and then they do another science or whichever genre has been repeated, and in the last I keep the dual passage. So many students, they find dual passage very confusing, but remember, dual passage has a very easy technique that I will discuss with you as we go ahead. And if you follow that technique, only that technique will help you to, do well in the dual passage. So sometimes what happens, all the students who are till here, they do very good. And then when it comes to this passage, they make a lot of mistakes. So because they forget that, okay, we were taught this technique and we are actually supposed to follow that. Okay, so this is the first two things that you have to do is take a mock test and then decide your order. Now, when you're deciding your order, like I said, try all the three variants, that is easy to difficult, difficult to easy, and this already fixed order that I am giving you. Okay, got my point? So what will happen is, if you will try all the three, you will have an idea that, okay, I have to follow this particular order only because only that works for me. Got my point? Understood? Any doubts still here?
No.
Okay. Vanilla and Vardhan, it will be nice if you guys also respond. Now, moving on, let's understand the techniques of reading. So we have, basically here we follow three techniques of reading. Okay, so we have three techniques. One is known as the skim and scan technique. Okay, then the other is called as the selective reading technique. Okay, and the third one is called as the NWAT technique. Okay, and there is actually one more, the fourth one, that is called as a trigger word methodology. Trigger word methodology. This particular technique works very well for genres that you do not like or you find them difficult. Like, for example, I find science difficult, so I follow this for science. So first, let's start with skim and scan. What is exactly skim and scan? So what I'm going to explain is slightly different from what is given in the books, but please do pay attention. Okay, so first is the skim and scan technique. What happens in the skim and scan technique is, now many students, what they do is they do not read the questions before going to the passage. Okay, with skim and scan you have two variants. You can either read the question first and then follow the technique that I'm going to explain, or you can first follow the technique and then read the question. Any which ways, it will be beneficial only. So skim and scan, what do you basically do is, when you have the passage, you simply just read the first line and last line. Read the first line and last line of each para. Okay, you read the first line and last line of each para. Then what do you do is, you read the first and last line. You, while reading itself, what you'll do is, you'll simply just scribble down or make a note of the main subject of the paragraph. Main subject of the paragraph. So what do I mean by main subject of the paragraph here is, let's say suppose the passage is about Kavalji. Okay, let's say the passage is about Kavalji. The first paragraph is talking about her personal life. Second paragraph will talk probably about her achievements. The third paragraph will talk about her professional life. Okay, so when you read the first line and the last line of each paragraph, you get an idea what exactly is the paragraph talking about. Okay, when that happens, when you're clear that, okay, this is what the paragraph is talking about, you just make a note of it right there when you are, when you're reading your passage itself. You do that, and then what you do is you read all the questions. You read all the questions. Okay. Now, when you read the questions, I'm not talking about reading the options, just read all the questions. Now, when you read all the questions, what will happen is each question has its own subject, what the question is asking you, or who it is asking to you, who is it asking about. After that, what happens is when you understand what the subject is talking about, you simply match it with your paragraphs. You will understand that, okay, if the question is about Kavalji's professional life, so you know which exact paragraph you have to refer to. Okay, are you understanding what I'm trying to explain? So match the subject of the question to the subject of the paragraph. That is what you have to do here. So by match, I don't literally mean you have to sit and match. What I mean is, suppose you're answering question number 1 and you feel that question number 1's answer, you will find it in paragraph 4 because you read about that subject there. So what you will do is you will read your question number 4, you will read the options, then you will go back to paragraph number 4, read that entire paragraph, and then answer your question. Are you understanding my point? Did you get what am I trying to say? So basically, skim and scan is something wherein you are reading the passage, the entire passage, you are reading it, but you're reading it in bits and pieces, and you're trying to understand something that is called as reading between the lines. Reading between the lines. So this reading between the lines puts to test your analytical skills, which is very much tested in your SAT reading section. Okay. Ideally, for SAT reading, skim and scan is the best technique that's possible. Okay, it saves a lot of time, it saves a lot of energy. You don't have extra information in your mind when you're solving a particular question. So what happens is automatically there is less scope for doubts. Okay, but sometimes what happens is people and kids in India, we are used to reading the entire thing and then answering the question. For that also, we have a technique. I will explain you that. NWAT is about that only. Any doubts in the skim and scan technique? Anything that you have not understood? One more thing with skim and scan is underline words or sentences that you find important. Once you do that, it becomes easier for you to refer back. Are you understanding my point? Now I told you that you can, the third step that is there here, that is reading of the question. Okay, this reading of the questions can be done as the first step as well. So that now some students have this very good quality wherein, they train themselves so well that they read the question, and while they are reading the passage itself, they mark that, okay, question number 1 can be answered from this paragraph. Question number 3 can be answered from this paragraph. So you have to train yourself for that. If you cannot do that, that's not an issue. That's multitasking. Okay, that is your mind is reading and understanding the paragraph. Okay, plus it is also working on which question can be answered from which paragraph. This is a technique that very well works for SAT. Okay, but again, it might or might not work out for you. It's a common technique that works out for most of the students. But if it does not work out for you, please don't be paranoid. You have other ways to score as well. Got it? I've had students who have scored 780 in English just by using the NWAP method, because skim and scan doesn't work for them. They get confused with that method. Okay. So, like I said, like you have to decide your order. Similarly, here you have to decide your technique also. You have to try all the 4 techniques. and you have to see which one works for you. Okay, got it? Any doubts in the skim and scan? Anything you did not understand? Any one of you, including Bhavani ma'am and Shrima ma'am. Anyone has not understood anything, please go ahead and ask. Samiksha, Vardhan, Vanilla, anything that you've not understood?
No, ma'am.
Understood?
No, ma'am. Understood,
Yes,
ma'am.
understood.
Understood, ma'am.
Perfect. So moving on, can I erase this or do you want to take a screenshot?
Done, ma'am. You can erase.
Done? Okay, perfect. Now moving on to something called as the selective reading technique. Now, what happens with selective reading technique is, this technique is a little time taking, okay, but it has very good results if you practice it well, okay. So selective reading, what happens is, here, first step is you read all the questions. Read all the questions, okay. And when you're reading the questions, automatically you will be able to identify the subject of the question. Okay, identify the subject of the question. Now, once you have identified the subject of the question, the next thing that you have to basically do, or the thing that you have to do is, you have to search for that subject in the passage. Search for the subject in the passage. Now, what does it mean when I say search? When I say search, I literally mean search. Say, suppose the subject of the question is success. Let's say success, they are talking about success. The question is related to a word called success. What you will do is, you will go to the passage, you will just search wherever you find the word success. You will read that line or that paragraph if required, and you will see if you're getting your answer related to that particular question or no. Like I said, it's a little time taking and there is a chance of error as well. Why? What might happen is you might, miss out if there's that particular word is probably there in the last paragraph and you did not read the last paragraph, and just on the basis of what you read, you have answered your question, there might be a chance of error. So you cannot let that happen. You have to continuously keep searching, and you have to read all the parts where that particular word is present. Got it? That is what is called selective reading. So what happens with selective reading is, selective reading is very good for certain type of questions, not certain type of passages. Now we have certain questions which ask us the central idea of the passage. What is the central idea of the passage, or what is the main idea of the passage? Or they tell you, give us the summary of the passage. Okay, such things. Now, or automatically, when they tell you central idea of the passage, main idea of the passage, summary of the passage, you don't have any subject of the question. When you don't have the subject of the question, how will you answer it? Very simple. What you will do is, you will simply just apply a little bit of skim and scan here. What you will do is, you will read the first paragraph and the last paragraph. Okay, you will understand what the passage is talking about, and then you will understand that, okay, these are the two main. So the introduction and the summary or the conclusion of the passage are something that are very important in SAT. Okay, from what topic the passage started with and what topic is it ending on, or what point is it ending on. So what we'll end up doing is, you will actually understand that, okay, these are the two important subjects of this particular passage, and then you will search for those two words in the entire passage and you will follow this technique. Did you understand my point? Now what happens is, with this central idea, main idea, or summary of the passage, always remember this type of question should be solved at the end. That is, keep it for the last. I don't mean last of the reading section. I mean at the end of that particular passage. I'll tell you why. Because what will happen is, if you have solved the other questions directly or indirectly, you have read most of the passage. Okay. So because you have covered most of the passage, what will happen is, and you already have an idea, and then selective reading technique will make it even more easier for you to find the answer. Did you get my point? If you will go ahead and answer this central idea, main idea, summary of the passage in the first itself, what will happen is you'll get confused unnecessarily, and there are high chances that you might make mistakes in the other questions also. So my honest suggestion will be, even though it's a little time taking, try to ace the selective reading technique. It works beautifully for many students. Got it? Especially if you're someone who, who doesn't read much or who doesn't have an interest towards certain things. Got it? Any doubts in the selective reading technique?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Vanilla, any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Perfect. Please take a screenshot so that I can move ahead. Done?
Yes, sir.
The next thing that you have, the third technique that you have is NWAT. It's not a part of any book. Okay, this technique has been made by Kavaljeet Kaur. Okay, it's actually a combination of two techniques or three techniques, let's say. So I have named it NWAT. It's called normal with a twist. The twist is nothing big. It's just the idea of building it up. So what happens with now many students have this thing that, ma'am, we cannot follow skim and scan. We cannot follow, selective reading. It's just not working for us. What we'll do is we'll work on our reading speed. We will develop the speed, but we will read the entire passage. They have this thing. Okay. So what for such students, especially the three of you, that is Saniksha, Vardhan, and Vanilla, the three of you, you said you have the habit of reading. So students who have the habit of reading, they usually, follow this technique, because what happens with them is, because they're so used to reading already, that, they cannot follow all this technique where you just read parts in parts and, and you just answer the question. So that is one problem with students who have the habit of reading. But this one, if you can ace your reading speed, it will help you a lot. So what you basically do here is, you're going to read all the questions. Read all the questions first, including options. Including options. Okay. Identify the subject of the question. Identify the subject of the question. Okay. And then what you will do is, you will read the entire passage. Read the entire passage. You are not going to read it in bits and pieces. However it is, you're just going to read it that way only. One thing that you're going to do when you're reading the entire passage is, you will mark which question can be answered from which part. Like you do in the skim and scan technique. Same way, you're going to just mark where, each part, which question can answer which part, or which part will give you the answer for which question. And then the last step is, you will solve all your questions. Now, while you are solving these questions, okay, we have different types of questions in each passage. That's common across all the passages. So we have a certain order that has to be followed here. The order is something like this. You will first answer word in context question. Word in context questions is basically, they'll tell you in line 21, what does the word identify refer to. Okay. Now, word in context means in that context that they're talking about, in that situation that the sentence is being used, what is the meaning of that word. Now, remember one thing, many students, they get confused. They think word in context means the meaning of the entire word will change completely. No, it's not necessary that the entire meaning will change. Sometimes what happens is, they might use it in a different tone. By tone, I mean, suppose if I say Kavaljeet is a very intelligent student. Okay, I don't actually mean she's intelligent. I'm sarcastically saying that she's intelligent. You will understand that when you're reading the passage. Are you understanding my point? So word in context questions are to be answered first. Then you have direct line references given in the questions for some of the questions. You will answer those first, second. Then you will answer questions which ask you about, we have something called as evidence-based questions. Evidence-based questions. What are evidence-based questions? Evidence-based questions are basically paired questions wherein first a question is given to you and the options are given. The next question will ask you to give an evidence from the passage, that is line references will be given, say lines 20 to 25. Option A is line 20 to 25. Option B will be lines 30 to 32. Like that, you will have 4 set of line references given to you, and you have to tell them that for the previous question, I got my answer from these lines. Okay, you're going to answer evidence-based questions, and then last May, you're going to answer the whatever questions are left, plus the central idea, the main idea, whatever whatever is asked in the passage. Got it? So this is the NWAT technique. It's a combination of all the techniques. Now, for direct line reference questions, there's, like I told you, there's something called as the trigger word methodology. What is a trigger word methodology? It is very commonly used these days by many students. Basically, the words that are given in the passage, their synonyms are given in the options. Okay. Now, many students, they all over the internet, it had become a trend a few months ago that SAT has lowered its levels. You just have to find synonyms. And many students, they believed all of that, and they actually spoiled their SAT English reading exam by only looking for synonyms. What they ended up doing is they ended up, memorizing a set of words. Okay, and they started searching for those synonyms in the options, and they blindly mark those options. Please do not do that with direct line references questions. What you have to only remember is when a direct line reference is given, suppose they ask you what is given in lines 40 to 51. Okay, suppose they are given in 40 to 51, you will start reading from 38 to 52. Okay, or 53 max. Why? To understand what is actually being spoken about, because you have to mark your answer only on the basis of what is given in those lines. You cannot go above and beyond that, even though it is a part of the passage. Are you understanding my point? So those questions are also known as big picture questions. Big picture questions. Big picture questions are basically questions where they confuse you by giving the line reference also and asking you what the passage on the whole means also. Big picture questions are questions where you have to look at the exact line reference, plus you have to take the whole passage into consideration. Whereas when it comes to direct line reference questions, you're only and only supposed to stick to those lines and what those lines are giving as information. Now, trigger word, the fourth method that we have, it's a continuation of this only, that is why I'm explaining to you. Trigger word methodology, it's just you follow all the 5 steps, but you just include the trigger word methodology in the 5th step. So what you do is you just look for words, which could have been repeated in the question or in the options, plus in the passage. You search for those words and you follow the selective reading technique and you answer your question. Got my point? So trigger word methodology is basically based on synonyms plus selective reading. You have to know the synonym and you have to actually read that part and then answer the question. You cannot simply just mark the answer on the basis of synonyms. If you do that, you're going to lose a lot of marks. Got it? Understood my point? Am I clear till here? So these are the 3 techniques or 4 techniques that we follow for the reading section. From here on, so this is the basic knowledge that you need for the reading section. See, understand one thing, reading section in SAT is all about practice. There's nothing to teach. I cannot teach you reading. I can definitely guide you with your approach. So from here on, what we'll be doing is I will be sending you, question types, practice papers for question types. You will do it as homework. We will discuss it in the class and we will understand if your approach is correct or not. First, we'll work on your approach plus your reading speed. Then we will find out which technique works best for you. And then from there on, combining all these 3 things, we will try to work on your reading score. All of this will happen once you give your mock test. Got it? Understood?
Yes,
Am I
ma'am.
clear? Any doubts? Anything
Yes,
you
ma'am.
want to ask?
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts till here?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay,
No, ma'am.
so to quickly summarize, what did we do today? We first understood what do we have in the reading section. We understood the question types that we have, the reading techniques that we can follow, the genres that we have in the reading section, and what all work you have to do. So probably in the next class, we'll write a reading test. Okay, you will write it right in front of me in the class itself. I will send you the test and then you can take it up and we will just, understand where each one of you stands. Then we'll decide the order of your genre and everything. Got it? Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Any
Yes,
doubts,
ma'am.
anything you